Picture the final showdown in Shinjuku. Satoru Gojo stands behind his infinity barrier confidently. He knows Sukuna has to rely on complex curse techniques to bypass his defenses, but instead of expanding his domain, Sukuna just smiles, pulls back his fist, and punches the air with enough physical force to crack a tectonic plate. In Jujutsu Kaisen, power always has a hard limit, the fragile human body. Even the king of curses has to burn negative emotion just to reinforce his flesh and heal his wounds. If a sorcerer runs out of cursed energy, they're just meat and bone. But in the invincible universe, power is strictly biological. Viltrumites don't need magic to fly through a building, break the sound barrier, or survive a nuclear blast. They're born as apex predators, armed with smart atoms that lets them ignore the laws of physics. Today, we're taking Sukuna's genius intellect, his technique, and his absolute mastery of Jujutsu, and we're weaving it all into the genetic code of a Viltrumite conqueror. We're going to break down exactly how this anomaly rewrites the history of the Heian era. We'll look at how an indestructible alien body supercharges cursed energy output, how heavy hitters like Gojo and Maharaga handle a threat that doesn't need magic to kill them, and if anyone in Jujutsu society actually stands a chance, or if this version of Sukuna simply claims Earth as his own. And eventually, the Viltrum Empire will come to check on their scout, and they won't like what they find. To set the stage, we need to establish how a Viltrumite ends up in Heian era Japan. Over 1,000 years ago, the Viltrum Empire sent a scout ship to Earth. The ship crashes in Japan. The scout dies, but a child survives. This child grows up in the Heian era, the golden age of Jujutsu. He looks human, but his biology is entirely alien. As he grows, he realizes he's different. Normal weapons break against his skin. He can lift boulders effortlessly. He can fly without using any cursed techniques. But because he grows up surrounded by curses and sorcerers, he also learns to harness cursed energy. This is where the nightmare begins. In the standard timeline, Sukuna climbs to the top of Jujutsu society through his unmatched understanding of cursed energy and his lethal techniques. These are primarily cleave and dismantle. He fights the strongest sorcerers of the era and slaughters all of them. He becomes known as the king of curses. But in this alternate timeline, the Heian era is not a golden age, it's a slaughterhouse. When the elite sorcerers of the Fujiwara and Sugawara clans challenge this version of Sukuna, they don't face a normal sorcerer. They face a Viltrumite. The fights don't last for hours. They end in seconds. A sorcerer reinforces their body with cursed energy to take a hit. But when Sukuna hits them, he's not just using cursed energy. He's using base physical strength that can once again crack tectonic plates. Imagine a sorcerer trying to block Sukuna's punch. The sorcerer uses domain amplification or simple domain to defend themselves, but it doesn't matter. Sukuna punches right through the barrier, right through the cursed energy reinforcement, and right through the sorcerer's chest. Sukuna doesn't just defeat the Heian era sorcerers, he breaks their spirit completely. He realizes very quickly that no one on Earth can match him physically, but Sukuna is a genius. He doesn't just rely on his fists, he's fascinated by Jujutsu. He learns how to use cursed energy to perfect his innate techniques. He develops cleave and dismantle. He creates his domain expansion, Malevolent Shrine. Now here's where it gets interesting. The sorcerer's physical body acts as a vessel for their cursed energy. If a body is weak, it limits how much energy the sorcerer can output without damaging themselves. This is why Yuta Kotsu, who has more raw cursed energy than Gojo, cannot just output it all at once. It's because his human body would tear itself apart. Sukuna does not have this limit. His Viltrumite cells are nearly indestructible. He can output maximum cursed energy constantly without ever straining his muscles or his nervous system. Watch what that does to Malevolent Shrine. In the standard timeline, the shrine operates on a binding vow. He sacrifices a closed barrier to maximize his range to a 200-meter radius, and that limit exists because tying a domain to the physical world without a barrier requires immense skill and enormous energy. But with the Viltrumite brain and an endless capacity for energy output, that ceiling doesn't exist for them. He can push the radius to cover an entire city, and he doesn't just stand in the center and cast. He activates Malevolent Shrine and takes flight. Because his alien brain and body never suffer from cursed technique burnout or physical fatigue, Sukuna can keep the domain open indefinitely while moving at supersonic speeds. He flies over the Heian era armies, bringing the storm of infinite slashes with him, carving through entire provinces in minutes without ever dropping the technique. And eventually Sukuna gets bored. He's conquered the era. He knows he can live for thousands of years due to his Viltrumite biology, but he wants to fight the sorcerers of the future. He makes a binding vow with Kenjaku. He splits his soul into 20 cursed objects, his fingers, so he can reincarnate later. But turning a Viltrumite into cursed objects changes the nature of the fingers. In this timeline, the fingers are not just indestructible because of a binding vow. They're indestructible because they're made of Viltrumite bone and tissue. Even if a sorcerer somehow bypassed the binding vow, they still couldn't destroy the fingers. You would need to throw them into a star to melt them. So Sukuna enters a dormant state, waiting for the modern era. The events of the first few arcs of JJK play out similarly, but the power scaling shifts immediately when Yuji Itadori eats the first finger. Yuji is already physically gifted. He's strong and fast. So when he eats the finger, he doesn't just take in Sukuna's soul. He takes in Viltrumite DNA. This integration changes Yuji's body. His skin becomes denser. His muscle fibers change. He essentially becomes a Viltrumite human hybrid. When Yuji fights curses in the early arcs, he doesn't need cursed energy to exercise the weak ones. He can just punch them hard enough that the kinetic force destroys their physical forms. When Yuji fights the finger bearer at the detention center, the curse doesn't stand a chance. Even without Sukuna taking over, Yuji takes the hits that should kill him, and his Viltrumite durability keeps his limbs intact. When Sukuna does take over, the difference is clear. In the standard timeline, Sukuna toys with the finger bearer and uses his domain to kill it. In this timeline, Sukuna takes control, looks at the curse, and simply walks through it. He moves faster than sound, steps forward, and his body tears through the curse's mass like a bullet going through water. Satoru Gojo notices a difference immediately. When Gojo fights Sukuna for those 10 seconds in the very first episode, he uses his speed and his limitless technique to show off. He expects Sukuna to be fast. What he doesn't expect is Sukuna being able to break the sound barrier just by shifting his weight. Gojo dodges a punch from Sukuna. The punch misses, but the air pressure from the swing shatters the windows of the school building behind them and cracks the concrete foundation. Gojo realizes right then that Sukuna is not just a powerful curse. His physical body is operating on a set of rules that Gojo has never seen before. But there's one more thing Gojo notices, one thing that doesn't make any sense. For a fraction of a second, when Sukuna's domain amplification touched the edge of infinity, something flickered underneath the technique. Not cursed energy, something older. Gojo files it away. He doesn't say anything out loud. He just knows that Jujutsu Society is dealing with a planetary threat if Sukuna gets all 20 fingers. The story moves to the Shibuya incident. This is where the world realizes exactly what Sukuna is. Kenjaku traps Gojo in the prison realm. The disaster curses run wild in Shibuya. Yuji is fed multiple fingers at once, and Sukuna awakens in control of the body. Now he has 15 fingers of power. He's operating at 75% of his maximum capacity. In the standard timeline, Sukuna fights Jogou to prove a point. He tells Jogou that if he can land a single hit on him, he'll work under the curses. In this timeline, the fight is much shorter. Jogou creates maximum heat. He uses his maximum meteor technique. He summons a giant flaming rock from the sky and drops it directly on top of Sukuna. In the OG story, Sukuna dodges it at the last second. Here, Sukuna doesn't move. He just stands in the middle of the street. He looks up at the meteor. He doesn't use cursed energy to block it. He just lets it hit him. The meteor crashes into the city. The explosion levels several blocks. The heat turns the asphalt to glass. Gojo watches the dust settle, thinking he actually did something. But when the smoke clears, Sukuna is standing in the exact same spot. His clothes are burnt away, but his skin doesn't have a single scratch on it. He didn't even flinch. Viltrumites can fight in the core of a star. A fire curse's meteor feels like a warm breeze to him. Sukuna looks at Jogou. He doesn't use his fire arrow technique. He just bends his knees and jumps. The force of his jump craters the ground beneath him. He clears the distance between him and Jogou in a second. He grabs Jogou by the head. He doesn't use cursed energy. He just squeezes his hand. Jogou's head shatters into dust. The fight is over instantly. Then, Megumi Fushiguro summons Maharaga. And this is where the mechanics get very interesting. Maharaga is a Shikigami that adapts to any and all phenomena. If you cut it, it adapts to cuts. If you burn it, it adapts to fire. In the standard timeline, Sukuna uses his mantle and cleave until Maharaga adapts. Then he uses fire technique to kill it before it can heal. But how does Maharaga adapt to a Viltrumite? Sukuna sees Maharaga. He realizes it's a strong Shikigami. He throws a casual punch. The punch hits Maharaga in the chest. The force sends Maharaga flying through 10 office buildings. Maharaga hits the ground damaged, but the wheel in its head turns. It adapts to blunt force trauma. Its body becomes denser. Sukuna flies after it. Yeah, flies. He doesn't just jump. He uses Viltrumite flight to hover above the city. He looks down at Maharaga. He sends a barrage of dismantle slashes. The slashes cut Maharaga to pieces, but the wheel turns again. Maharaga heals and adapts to the cutting attacks. This is when Sukuna realizes the mechanics of the Shikigami. He knows that he needs to destroy it in one hit. In the standard timeline, he uses his domain expansion, but in this timeline, he doesn't need to. He wants to test his physical limits. Sukuna drops down from the sky. He grabs Maharaga by the neck. Maharaga tries to hit him with the sword of extermination, but the blade snaps against Sukuna's skin. Sukuna holds the Shikigami tight. He flies straight up. He breaks the sound barrier. Then he breaks into the atmosphere. He flies Maharaga into the vacuum of space. The sudden change in pressure and the lack of oxygen cause Maharaga to freeze. The Shikigami tries to adapt to the vacuum of space, but adaptation takes time. Sukuna doesn't give it time. He throws Maharaga towards the sun, then uses a point-blank cleave, reinforced by his maximum physical output, to vaporize the Shikigami into atoms. Sukuna floats in orbit, looking down at the earth. He sees the entire planet. His Viltrumite conqueror instincts start to surface. He doesn't just want to fight strong sorcerers anymore. He wants to own the planet. He returns to Shibuya. He uses his domain expansion just to clear out the remaining curses and any sorcerers in his way. The radius of his domain covers all of Tokyo. Millions of people die in seconds. The world is plunged into absolute terror. The ruins of Shibuya are still burning when Sukuna makes his decision. Yuji's body is strong. The Viltrumite DNA soaked into his vessel has made it stronger than any human frame has a right to be. But Yuji is still in there, still fighting from the inside, still clawing at the walls of his own mind every second Sukuna holds control. It's not pain, it's just inconvenience. But the King of Curses does not tolerate inconvenience at all. Sukuna wants a vessel that doesn't push back, so he sets his sights on Megumi Fushiguro. Then the Culling Games begin. Kenjaku forces the evolution of humanity through mass combat. Sukuna plays along, but his goals are different. He waits for the right moment, takes over Yuji's body, and forces Megumi to ingest a finger. Then Sukuna takes control of Megumi, and this combination is devastating. Sukuna now has Viltrumite physics, his own curse techniques, and the 10 Shadows technique. When Sukuna summons the Shikigami, they're not normal animals. They scale to his cursed energy output and his physical strength. His divine dogs are massively terrifying beasts that move at supersonic speeds. He tames the remaining shadows easily. He summons a new Maharaga. Because he's using Megumi's body, the Shikigami obeys him. He now has a pet that adapts to any attack, backed up by his own alien strength. He bathes in the evil energy of the cursed bath to suppress Megumi's soul completely. When he emerges, he doesn't just look like a sorcerer. He looks like a king. He wears the traditional Heian robes, but he floats inches off the ground at all times. Kenjaku approaches him. He's a master planner who has lived for 1,000 years. He wants to merge humanity with Tengen, but Sukuna looks at Kenjaku. He knows Kenjaku is useful, but he also knows Kenjaku is an insect compared to him. Sukuna tells Kenjaku that he will allow the merger to happen, but only because he wants to fight the resulting monster. If the monster is weak, Sukuna plans to conquer the earth and turn humanity into a slave race. Just like his Viltrumite biology is telling him. The remaining sorcerers realize they're out of time. They have to unseal Satoru Gojo now. So, just like in the OG timeline, they manage to open the prison realm. Gojo is free. Now, this is the most important fight in the history of the universe. Satoru Gojo, the strongest human sorcerer, against a Viltrumite king of curses. The fight takes place in Shinjuku. The world watches. Gojo is confident. He has the Six Eyes, which allows him to process cursed energy perfectly. He also has Limitless, which puts an infinite distance between him and any attack. Nothing can touch him. But Sukuna is calm. He has all 20 fingers. He's at 100% power, and he knows about infinity. The fight begins. Gojo fires a hollow purple. It's a ball of imaginary mass that erases everything in its path, but Sukuna sees it coming. A normal sorcerer would try to counter it with a domain or dodge. Sukuna just flies out of the way. He moves so fast that Gojo's Six Eyes barely register his movement. Sukuna appears directly behind Gojo. The king throws a punch. The punch hits the infinity barrier. This is a fascinating interaction of physics and magic. Infinity divides the space between Gojo and the attack. The punch slows down as it gets closer, never actually reaching Gojo. Sukuna feels the resistance. He pulls his fist back. He realizes he cannot punch through infinite space using just physical force, because even if Viltrumite cannot cross infinity. Gojo turns around and smiles. You're fast, but you can't touch me. Sukuna smiles back. I don't need to cross the space. I just need to turn it off. Sukuna uses domain amplification. This covers his body in a thin layer of a domain, which neutralizes curse techniques that it touches. So he rushes Gojo again. This time when he punches, the domain amplification touches the infinity barrier. The barrier flickers and neutralizes. Sukuna's fist connects with Gojo's stomach. The impact is catastrophic. Gojo uses cursed energy reinforcements to protect his organs, but it's not enough. The force of the punch shatters Gojo's ribs and sends him flying backwards through 20 buildings. Gojo coughs up blood. He uses reverse curse technique to instantly heal his bones. He realizes the physical gap is massive. If Sukuna lands a clean hit on his head, even RCT won't save him. Gojo has to rely on his speed, his teleportation, and his domain. So he uses unlimited void. He traps Sukuna inside the domain. The domain forces infinite information into the target's brain, paralyzing them instantly. But this is where Sukuna's Viltrumite biology saves him. A human brain would fry in seconds. A curse's brain would stall. But a Viltrumite brain is designed to process interstellar travel, high-speed combat, and complex physics in a fraction of a second. The information overload hits Sukuna. He freezes, but he doesn't go brain dead. His smart atoms fight the overload, rapidly repairing the neural pathways as they burn out. He's stunned for a few seconds. Gojo uses his time. He rushes forward to tear Sukuna's heart out, but Sukuna recovers just as Gojo reaches him. Sukuna opens his own malevolent shrine. The domains clash. Gojo's barrier is strong, but Sukuna's domain attacks the outside of Gojo's barrier. The physical slashes from malevolent shrine are backed by Viltrumite energy output. They tear Gojo's barrier apart in seconds. Gojo's domain shatters. He suffers curse technique burnout. Now, Gojo is standing in the middle of malevolent shrine without his infinity. Thousands of slashes hit his body. Gojo pushes his RCT to the absolute limit, healing the cuts as fast as they happen. He looks at Sukuna. Sukuna is slowly walking towards him through the storm of slashes. Gojo tries to fight back using his hand-to-hand combat. He's a master martial artist. He hits Sukuna with a black flash. The hit is perfectly timed, multiplying the force by the power of 2.5. Sukuna tanks a hit to the chest. It pushes him back a few steps, but it doesn't break his skin. Sukuna laughs. You're the strongest human I've ever fought, but you're still just human. Sukuna doesn't need to use world-cutting slash. He doesn't need Maharaga to show him a new way to cut space. He just uses his speed. He grabs Gojo by the throat. Gojo tries to use his cursed energy to blast Sukuna away, but the grip is like a steel vice. Sukuna squeezes. Satoru Gojo, the strongest sorcerer in the modern era, dies. For a moment, nothing moves. The storm of malevolent shrine keeps going, carving the ruined landscape apart, but the rest of it, the world, just stops. Yuji is somewhere in the dust on the edge of the battlefield. He sees the Six Eyes go dark. He doesn't scream. He just goes very quiet in a way that means something is permanently broken. Sukuna drops the body. He turns off his domain. The area of Shinjuku is a flat wasteland of dust and rubble. Shortly after Gojo's death, the heavy hitters step through the dust onto the ruined Shinjuku battlefield. Yuta Kotsu, Maki Zenin, Kinji Hikari, and Yuji Itadori. They watch the strongest sorcerer who ever lived get his neck crushed in front of them. Sukuna looks at them. He'd spent 1,000 years thinking about this era. He'd felt the residue of their techniques across decades of dormancy, since the ambition building in the modern world of jujutsu. He'd expected something. He'd expected a fight that would at least make the wait worthwhile. Instead, 4 kids are stepping through the dust towards him. This is what the modern era produced. He doesn't feel anticipation. He feels something closer to grief. Not for them, but for himself. That this is all there is to this fight. He sighs. Let's get this over with. Yuta doesn't waste time. He opens his domain expansion, authentic mutual love. The barrier traps Sukuna inside a wasteland filled with endless katanas, each holding a different curse technique. Yuta grabs a sword and activates his copy techniques. He coordinates with the others, launching a relentless assault just to pin Sukuna down for a fraction of a second. They need him to activate Yuta's trump card, Jacob's Ladder, a technique that projects a huge column of blinding light designed to extinguish cursed energy and erase curse techniques entirely. The light hits Sukuna directly. It burns away his cursed energy output instantly. Yuta thinks they actually have a chance. In standard jujutsu society, society, if you strip a sorcerer of their cursed energy, they're just a normal person. They become slow, fragile, and easy to kill. Yuta thinks Sukuna is now just a physical fighter trapped inside a domain. But Yuta doesn't understand Viltrumite biology. Sukuna without cursed energy can still punch through the moon. Sukuna stands in the burning light of Jacob's ladder. He doesn't burn, he doesn't scream. He just looks at Yuta through the bright beam. "You turned off my magic," Sukuna says, cracking his neck. "Let me show you what I really am." Sukuna doesn't use a flying slash. He just pushes off the ground. The force of his jump shatters the foundation of Yuta's domain. He clears the distance in a fraction of a second and punches Yuta straight in the chest. The physical force shatters Yuta's katana into dust, breaks both of his arms, and crushes his ribcage instantly. Yuta falls to the ground, dead on impact. The domain collapses around them. Hikari rushes in. He's already hit a jackpot in his own domain, immortal for exactly 4 minutes and 25 seconds. His body automatically heals any damage using an infinite overflow of cursed energy. Hikari's punches bounce off Sukuna's skin. Sukuna watches the reinforced knuckles shatter and heal and shatter and heal, and in about 3 seconds he clocks a source. The reverse cursed energy is flowing directly from the brain. He steps behind Hikari, grabs his head, and snaps the spine. The flow gets cut off at the source. Hikari's body drops to the rubble, lifeless. 2 down, 2 left. Maki Zenin approaches next. She moves quietly through the dust. She has a heavenly restriction, 0 cursed energy, which means she doesn't show up on any sensory radar. Her physical body is enhanced to peak superhuman levels, and she's carrying the split soul katana. And this sword ignores physical toughness. It cuts directly at the target's soul. This is the only weapon on the entire battlefield that can actually hurt a Viltrumite. Viltrumites have indestructible skin and bones, but their souls aren't armored. Remember what Gojo noticed during that 10-second fight years ago? The flicker underneath domain amplification. The something that wasn't cursed energy. He never found out what it was, but Maki's sword has found it. Maki uses her perfect stealth to close into Sukuna's blind spot, where he's still looking at Hakari's body. She grips the katana. She swings it at his neck with everything she has. The blade connects. The steel slides through the skin. It feels like it's not cutting bone, but something beneath it. Something older. Something that's never been touched in over 1,000 years. Sukuna staggers. He actually staggers. His flight cuts out. His feet hit the ground for the first time in this entire fight, and there's a crack in the concrete where he lands. He drops to one knee. He reaches up and touches his neck, and when he pulls his hand away, he's bleeding. Real blood. Not cursed energy residue. Not technique overflow. Blood. For 3 seconds, nobody moves. Maki and Yuji watch from the perimeter holding their breath. Even Sukuna just kneels there in silence, staring at his hand like it's the first interesting thing he's seen all day. Then he stands back up. He doesn't rush it. He takes his time getting to his feet. He tilts his head. He looks at Maki with something that might, in the right light, almost pass for respect. "You're strong for a human," he says, "but you're a bad imitation of me." He rips the sword out of Maki's hand and tosses it aside. He grabs her by the throat and lifts her off the ground. Maki kicks and struggles, but she can't break the grip. He throws her straight down into the concrete with enough kinetic force to shatter every single bone in her body. Maki bounces off the crater and lies in the rubble, unable to move or breathe. Sukuna's healing kicks in. Sorcerers use RCT to heal wounds. It takes energy and requires complex calculations, but Viltrumites heal naturally. The smart Adams repairs tissue at an accelerated rate, and when he adds RCT on top of his Viltrumite healing factor, the wound at his neck closes in seconds. The cut seals like it was never there. Finally, it's just Yuji Itadori. Yuji steps forward through the dust. He looks at Gojo's body. He looks at Yuta, Hakari, and Maki. He doesn't hesitate. Because Yuji was a vessel for the King of Curses for so long, his muscles and bones soaked up a tiny fraction of that dense Viltrumite strength alongside the residual cursed energy. It makes him tougher than a normal sorcerer. Yuji uses blood manipulation and rushes Sukuna. He hits him with a perfectly timed black flash, and then another. The black sparks fly as Yuji unleashes a string of hits. The impacts actually push Sukuna back a few inches. Every time Yuji's cursed energy hits, it resonates with Sukuna's soul, trying to separate it and drop his overall output. For a brief moment, it looks like Yuji might actually do it. He screams and hits Sukuna with a massive black flash right to the chest. Sukuna skids back, his boots dragging through the dirt. He looks at Yuji. He sees the absolute determination burning in the boy's eyes. "You're annoying," Sukuna says, wiping a drop of blood from his hand. Sukuna stops playing around. He drops the handicap and uses his full Viltrumite speed. He disappears from Yuji's vision. There's no sound, just a rush of displaced air. He appears directly behind Yuji and drives his hand straight through Yuji's back, effortlessly piercing his spine and crushing his heart. Yuji gasps and coughs up a mouthful of blood. He looks down at the bloody hand sticking out of his own chest. His strength vanishes instantly, and he falls to his knees. Sukuna pulls his hand out and flicks the blood off his fingers. Yuji falls forward into the dirt, dead. The sorcerers are dead. Jujutsu High is wiped out. There's no one left to oppose him. Kinjaku approaches Sukuna in the ruins of Shinjuku. Kinjaku smiles. He tells Sukuna that the Culling Games are complete. They can now merge humanity with Tengen. Sukuna looks at Kinjaku. He realizes he doesn't need Kinjaku anymore. The fight with Gojo was fun, but the rest was boring. He doesn't want to fight a merged cursed spirit. He wants to build an empire. Sukuna raises his hand and fires a point-blank dismantle. It cuts Kinjaku's head off, destroying the brain inside before Kinjaku can even react. Sukuna stands alone in the wasteland. He decides it's time to fulfill his biological destiny. He is a Viltrumite after all. He's a conqueror. He flies across the globe. He destroys the military bases of every major country in hours. Fighter jets try to shoot him down. He flies right through them. Nuclear missiles are launched at him. He catches them and throws them back into the ocean. He systematically dismantles human civilization. He destroys governments, communication grids, and major cities. But he doesn't kill everyone. After all, he needs subjects to rule over. He establishes himself as a ruler of Earth. He sits on a throne built from the rubble of Tokyo. There's no curses left because humanity is too terrified of him to fear anything else.